The evidence will show that Gargiulo's plan to kill was to first identify a target who lived near him, acquaint himself with that victim and her habits and routines, and then watch, shadow, stalk, and hunt down the victims relentlessly as part of his plan to kill.
Tinseltown, Hollywood, brimming with fledgling actors, actresses, writers, and all sorts of Hollywood types looking to make it big both on and off the silver screen. It's a place where people go to pursue their dreams and make them a reality, and a place where dreams are dashed and reality faced. The district in Los Angeles is a household name across the world and has come to represent the US film industry and those associated with it. A place as renowned as Hollywood will always attract people in their droves, but not necessarily the kind of people you'd like to meet. One of those people would later come to be known as the Hollywood Ripper. Welcome and thank you for joining me. The story I have for you this evening is one of murder, somewhat reminiscent of the Jack the Ripper murders, hence the nickname of the killer. This story, however, does not begin in Hollywood. Instead, will begin in a small town called Glenview in Illinois, approximately 2,000 miles east across the country. It was in this town that a monster was born, a monster that would go on to brutally murder an unidentified number of victims, and his name is Michael Gargiulo. Michael Thomas Gargiulo was born on February 15th, 1976, in the town of Glenview, Illinois. He was one of 7 children and would later tell a psychologist that he suffered physical abuse at the hands of both his father and siblings. Growing up, he had a reputation around his neighborhood for being a bully with a quick temper. Former friend Scott Olson told monthly periodical Chicago Magazine that this guy would go from normal to crazy in like a second. The switch would flip and he would just become almost inhuman. Whether his temper and actions were fueled by abuse suffered at home or not, it was clear that Gargiulo had a wicked side. As Gargiulo grew, it seemed he had a penchant for getting into trouble, and by his early 20s was no stranger to arrest. While growing up in Glenview, he was arrested multiple times for offences including battery and burglary. It wasn't long before people in the vicinity of Gargiulo started showing up dead. Gargiulo lived around the corner from the Pacaccio family and was a friend of Doug Pacaccio. They both attended school with Doug's older sister, Tricia. Tricia Pacaccio graduated high school in 1993 and was due to attend Purdue University in Indiana. On Friday, August 13th, she met with friends for dinner, one last chance to be together before leaving for college. After dropping her friends off home, she drove herself back home at around 1 a.m. The next time anybody saw Tricia, she would be dead on the steps to her house. Tricia Pacaccio had been stabbed 12 times and her arm had been broken. In the summer heat of the previous night, Tricia's parents and 2 brothers had the air conditioning on and were unable to hear anything outside. Gargiulo, 17 at the time, was a suspect, but investigators said they did not have enough evidence to bring charges against him. Tricia's body was discovered by her father Rick Pacaccio. He tried to revive her to no avail. His blood-curdling scream would wake Doug, who he called out to call 911. The Pacaccio family, scarred by the memories of what they had seen that morning, left their house and would not return for 4 years. Shortly after their return, they had a visitor, Michael Gargiulo. He came by the house while Rick Pacaccio was at work and said he needed to talk to him. Michael insisted and waited at the house for his return, An hour or so later, when Rick arrived back home, he was greeted by Michael, who looked as if he had something to say. But before he could, his father and sister came in and said, "We have to leave, Michael." And with that, he was gone. This was the moment that Rick Pacaccio believed Michael Gargiulo to have been involved in Tricia's murder. Gargiulo would continue to evade persecution for this case by moving to Los Angeles in 1998 at the age of 22.
I would say, Tricia, I know that you know that I'm fighting for you, and you know that I love you and all of our family loves you. Her brothers, her sisters, her cousins, they all that knew her love her, and I just hope that from up in heaven that she knows all the cousins that were born since then and all her, and her nieces and nephews that she never got to know, that they're going to know about her.
It's said that he landed a job as a bouncer at the Rainbow Bar and Grill on Sunset Boulevard in West Hollywood, owing to his training in martial arts and boxing. While working this job, Gargiulo befriended two fellow bouncers, Timur Leary and Anthony Di Lorenzo. The two would later claim that during a car ride along Sunset Boulevard in 2000, Gargiulo admitted to the murder of Tricia Pacaccio. Later in 2000, Gargiulo would befriend Ashley Ellerin. Ellerin had dated a few young actors at the time, including Vin Diesel and Ashton Kutcher, a far cry from her new friend, Michael Gargiulo. Still, Gargiulo became besotted with the 22-year-old Ellerin, reportedly visiting her at odd hours and on at least one occasion seen sitting in a car outside her home in the middle of the night. On the night of February 21st, 2001, Ashley Ellerin was waiting at her home preparing for a date. She was going to attend a Grammy Awards party with Hollywood actor Ashton Kutcher. Kutcher wouldn't arrive at Ellerin's home to pick her up until almost 11 p.m. Upon knocking at her door, there was no answer. He tried calling, ringing about 3 times and leaving messages. Presuming that she had been mad at him for arriving late and not wanting to see him, Kutcher left the house. He would go on to testify that he looked through the window and saw red stains on the floor, but assumed that these were the result of spilled red wine, stating that he had recently attended a party at Ellerin's house where people were drinking, meaning spilled wine may not have been unheard of. The body of Ashley Ellerin was discovered the next morning upon the return of her roommate. She was on a landing outside her bedroom in a giant pool of blood. Her distraught roommate, scared that the killer may still be in the house, ran outside to her car before calling 911. It was determined that she had been stabbed 47 times in her chest, stomach and back, with some of the wounds measuring up to 6 inches deep, with one wound nearly severing her head entirely. Detective Tom Small reported that one stab wound actually penetrated the skull and took out a chunk of skull like a puzzle piece. A brutal killing like this screams of a man obsessed and enraged by jealousy. It seems that his infatuation was known to Ellerin's loved ones, as they gave the police the nickname Mike the Furnace Man.
February 21st, 22nd, regarding Ashley Ellerin. When the case is put on by the prosecution, I can assure you at the conclusion of that presentation of evidence, you will not find one single bit of physical evidence attributed to Miss Ellerin's death.
In 2002, Detective Lou Sala began reinvestigating the case of the murder of Tricia Pacaccio. DNA was found underneath Tricia's fingernails. However, due to the limited forensic technology at the time, investigators could not identify the suspect through the samples. During a phone call, Detective Lou Sala managed to convince Gargiulo to agree to give him a DNA sample. But when Sala flew to Los Angeles, Gargiulo was nowhere to be found. Upon speaking to the Los Angeles police, they realized that Sala was looking for the same man that they were in connection to the 2001 murder of Ashley Ellerin. A warrant for Gargiulo's DNA was issued and the sample ultimately sent to Cook County, but not before Gargiulo reportedly fought with detectives. In 2003, Cook County officials were able to link Gargiulo to the sample taken from Tricia's fingernails, a 1 in 395 million match. Despite this evidence, the Cook County State Attorney's Office refused to indict Gargiulo, claiming that the DNA could have been exchanged through casual contact due to their regular interactions. And at this point, the LAPD had no physical evidence against Mike the Furnace Man, and so no charges were filed against him for the murder of Ashley Ellerin. In the years following, Gargiulo would live as a free man, time in which he would meet other women. One former girlfriend alleged that in 2003 he punched her in the face and threatened to kill her. Gargiulo claimed that he would get away with it because of his extensive knowledge of forensics. The two had met when she hired him to fix her air conditioning. He wore blue surgical shoe covers while in her home, something workmen will often wear when performing a job in a client's home. It said that while he was on this job, he begged the woman to go on a date with him. He would then go on to stalk her, resulting in a restraining order being issued against him. By 2005, Michael Gargiulo had moved to El Monte, where he lived with another girlfriend, a suburb east of Los Angeles. He would soon meet a new neighbour within the apartment complex, 32-year-old mother of 4, Maria Bruno. In the early morning hours of December 1st, 2005, just 10 days after Bruno had moved in, Gargiulo snuck into her home through the kitchen window and murdered her. She was discovered later that morning by her estranged husband, Irving Bruno, who had custody of their children. Maria had suffered a number of barbaric injuries that would earn Michael Gargiulo the nickname of the Hollywood Ripper. Her throat had been slashed, along with numerous other stab wounds, and her breasts had been removed, with one of them placed over her mouth. There was just one clue found at the scene, a blue surgical shoe cover with a drop of Maria Bruno's blood.
It's been extremely tough throughout the years. I wouldn't want anybody to go through what I went through. The images that I had to see, I can not unsee them. Over the years, those images have caused great pain for me.
Soon after, Gargiulo had found another woman, moving with her to Santa Monica. It was here that he would set his sights on his next victim. Living across the street from their Santa Monica apartment was 27-year-old Michelle Murphy. It would later be determined that Gargiulo had a direct line of sight into Murphy's bedroom. During the night of April 28, 2008, Murphy awoke to a man in a hoodie and baseball hat repeatedly stabbing her in the arm and chest. She grabbed at the knife, grasping the blade with both hands. Despite the obvious pain, she struggled against her attacker to avoid being stabbed, and despite being just 5 feet and 1 inch tall, Murphy was able to fight off the 6'2" Gargiulo. She would later explain, "I was fighting with everything I had." During the struggle, the attacker cut himself with his own blade, leaving blood behind at the scene. As he ran out of the door to Michelle Murphy's apartment, he said, "I'm sorry." On the evening of June 6, 2008, Michael Gargiulo was arrested at 10:14 p.m. and taken into custody. He was reportedly held on $1.1 million bail. A search of his car would reveal a bag of tools and blue shoe covers, while a search of his apartment in El Monte would reveal the matching shoe cover used in the killing of Maria Bruno. Finally, on July 7, 2011, prosecutors in Cook County, Illinois charged Michael Gargiulo with the 1993 murder of Tricia Pacaccio, though he would first need to be tried for the murders of Ashley Ellerin and Maria Bruno in California. It would be years before the gears of justice began turning in the case of Michael Gargiulo, with the pre-trial not taking place until June 9th, 2017. The trial would be set for October 2017, however, due to delays, it would not begin until May 2nd, 2019. This trial would go on to draw international attention due to the relation to and testimony of Ashton Kutcher. The link of a celebrity to a serial killing case made this headline news across the world. Kutcher would not be the only witness, however, as this gargantuan case would see hundreds of witnesses called upon. Gargiulo's defense team would argue his innocence due to mental illness, claiming that he had no recollection of attacking Murphy. However, despite their efforts, Michael Gargiulo was found guilty of all charges on August 15th, 2019. The penalty phase began on October 7th, and after just a few hours of deliberation on October 15th, 2019, the jury recommended that Gargiulo be sentenced to death. Defensive motions would further delay justice, buying Gargiulo and his team more time. However, on July 16th, 2021, Michael Gargiulo was sentenced to death. Announcing his sentence, Judge Larry Paul Fidler said, "In this case, everywhere that Mr. Gargiulo went, death and destruction followed." While this may seem like a fit and just ending for the case of the Hollywood Ripper, it should be noted that much like the entirety of his prosecution, his death sentence may well be delayed for some time. The last execution in California was in 2006, and the practice has been banned since 2019 under Governor Gavin Newsom. In the end, the monster from Glenview, Illinois was caught, but not before he could extinguish the lives of at least 3 young women, and forever change the life of a 4th. It's alleged that Gargiulo had stated that just because 10 women were killed does not mean he murdered anyone. This statement has thrown uncertainty into the mix. 3 have been confirmed, but this raises the question of a further 7. Perhaps while on death row, we may hear further confessions from the Hollywood Ripper, Michael Gargiulo. Thank you for joining me for this story of murder. If you have any comments, questions or suggestions, please feel free to leave them down in the comments section below. Until next time.